Welcome. I'm Tom Platt with the Washington chapter of the Society for Range Management, and this is the first quarterly presentation hosted by our chapter in the new year. This afternoon, we're joined by John and Lynne Breese, who operate a family ranching operation called Dixie Meadow Company. For most of us, John and Lynne need no introduction. They're longtime members of the Society for Range Management and active participants in our activities. John is past president of the Pacific Northwest section, and Lynne is past newsletter editor extraordinaire and recipient of the 2018 Special Award for dedication and service for her long tenure in that position. And prior to that, in 2003, Lynne was the recipient of the Exemplary Service Award as part of the newsletter team. Together, the couple received the section's highest honors, the Trail Boss Award in 2004, the Inn for the Long Haul Award in 2007, and the Excellence in Range Management Award in 2017. John and Lynne are fourth generation ranchers on a ranch homesteaded by John's great-grandfather in 1888. Dixie Meadow Company is 12 miles east of Prineville, Oregon. You can read more about the ranch and the Breezes on our website, pnwsrm.org. Just search for Breeze. John and Lynne, thank you for hosting your many old and yet to become new friends on this virtual tour of your ranch.
Us and with Benny Beaver, and you can tell that we're Oregon Staters. The slide on the right is us in the 1990s, shortly after we came back.
And then the cabin behind us in that picture was built by the Houston family that came to this country. They homesteaded in the late 1800s. And it was really interesting when we came back to the ranch after the Breese family had purchased that piece of land. We could tell by the artifacts of old fences that we found that obviously these people in the early 1900s were doing rotational grazing long before it was really being discussed or researched. We also have a friend up in Clarkston, Washington, and his great aunt was born in that cabin. The reason it has the name Dixie Meadow, the Houstons, who came from Kentucky, named the meadow Dixie Meadow, and we've kept the name. And anytime our friend in Clarkston comes down here, we give him free rein to go out in this area, and any artifacts he can find, they're his, because they had to have been from his family.
All right, you can see that we're in the center of Oregon. If you
Point to post for them.
I will. But if you draw diagonals to Oregon, you'll find that here's Post, Oregon, and our ranch is just to the west of the center of Oregon.
And Post is considered the geographical center of Oregon.
Generations. This is my great-grandfather came in 1888 and homesteaded. This is my great-grandfather, my great-aunt Mamie. Great-great-grandmother
Mary.
And great-grandmother Charlotte. This is my grandfather as a young boy. And notice in the background, there's one tree right here, and the rest of it is not treed at all. Here's my grandfather. This is the little boy. And here's my grandfather, my aunt, my father, Eldred, my grandmother, Ora, and my uncle, Jerry. We show these slides is that my great-grandmother, that's what I said.
Two greats.
Born in 1817, my great-grandmother, Charlotte, and great-grandfather were born in 1853 and 54. So those are the people that really set the course for what the ranch looked like. And for my grandfather, 1885, grandmother 1878. And you figure that these people actually knew and could have known people who fought in the Civil War. And it seems like, that's bringing along a long, you think of it now as a long, long time ago, but these people were that, my grandfather taught us a lot, and we rode around a lot with him as we learned what the ranch was. But they're the ones that really brought the ranch to be what it was. My father was born 1905, and my Uncle Jerry in 1911. These people went through, they went through 2 world wars and depression that set a lot of the tone of how they raised us and how we look at it. You kind of think of it, they always went out to do the best they could with the knowledge they had. But if you're thinking about the knowledge they had, really wasn't the kind of knowledge we know about range management today. They came from the Willamette Valley, from Missouri, from Scotland and England, and on my mother's side from Norway. So these are the kind of people that came to our Central Oregon to ranch in this high desert area. So here's the original picture. Here's the homestead as it sits today. The only thriving thing is this one lilac tree. If you look back behind the house, here's that one tree. You can see the junipers that have come in and encroached. The reason we haven't cut those junipers is this is a 40-acre BLM encroachment into our property. But you can see as we've cleared out the junipers, the few pine trees that are coming. Obviously, you can see these junipers as they're coming through. It was all horsepower in the early days. Here's my father. Once again, my dad. Notice that they use skis for the trailer, for the wagon, and it was all by hand, a lot of work. And as progress happened later in the 20s, you can see, they didn't have pickups. There was just early cars, early tractors. This is the belt that runs the thrash machine, but it's all horse work. These thrash machines were not owned by the ranch. That these they were groups of people got a thrash machine. They went from ranch to ranch, clear through. This was a portable sawmill. Was on the ranch. And portable, not in today's news, but here they brought the mill in and set it up. Here's the mill pond. Here's the banks for the mill pond as they put the logs in the mill, and we're bringing them up. This is obviously a sunny Sunday or a holiday when they were taking this picture.
And the rest of the story that takes place up at this old log mill site. So John's aunt, Laurel, had just secured her teaching license. And so she lived at the family house, and she would ride her horse up here to the camp. And that was a good 1 mile climb, because it was no downhill, it was all uphill. So she would come up to the logging campsite, and there were many cabins around because the loggers were there with their families. And then she would teach the kids during the day. And then at the end of the day, she'd get on her horse and go back home. So one day she rode her horse up, tied him up where she always did, taught the kids, came out at the end of the school day. She couldn't find her horse. She was looking frantically, where's my horse? And this young logger came over to her and said, well, teacher, what's wrong? You look really worried. What can I do to help you? And she said, well, my horse, I can't find my horse. He said, well, let me help you. So they looked, and lo and behold, the horse was tied into one of the cabins, hidden. And this young logger said, later we learned that when he became Uncle Ernie, he was such a shy young man, he didn't know how to meet this teacher that he wanted to meet. So he hid her horse in order to meet her. Well, they became married, and their 4 children are still with us. The oldest cousin is 93 years old, and don't get in his way when he's moving because he's sharp, ready to go.
Notice how the trees have been, all the big trees have been cut out, and there's a view of Pilot Butte in the back. And nowadays, this is a view of the mill site, and you can see it was pretty well decimated, but now we brought it back. Notice this cow over on the right where the pointer is. That's right here on this side here. And if you're looking straight at the mill, here's the mill pond, a few remnants of the mill, and it would stretch across. This is kind of interesting picture. You know, I couldn't find a good picture. It was exactly the same spot. This is where we had some people from ODF and W, Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, and we had a class on water witching, and you can see the participant has the welding rod straight out, and this one they're starting to cross. The blue line is where there was a water flow, so they could witch this point. It was an interesting program. But if you're looking straight at that, and obviously you cannot see the mountain in the background, the trees have grown up.
And while you can't see their faces, because nobody believes that water witching really can be real, but when you see the faces of people who are doing it for the first time and the rods start moving and crossing, they're just, what? It really works. How can that be?
Early in the 30s and in the late 20s, early 30s, you can see junipers coming in. You can see that these fields were cultivated, and we did have bulls that they tried to raise. But you can see once again on these hillsides, little bitty trees. My aunt, my uncle, my dad all claimed that there were no junipers when they were growing up, but there were. You can see, early car with a pickup, so it's in those early years. What really drove the ranch in those early years were these little bags of wool and the sheep. So wool actually paid for the ranch, and the sheep were the money that were able to make that ranch work and expand the ranch to what it was in the day. And you can see these early trucks. You can see the sheep shearers working here. And then up in the corner, you see this smoke. That was where the mill was. And that's where those pictures came from earlier, from the mill. Down here was the ranch house, and that early pictures where we showed my grandfather and uncle and dad and aunt. If you look at this picture today, back here, look at this juniper tree, this one and this one, this one and this one. And here's this, that's the 3 juniper trees. And this would be where the mill was. This was a controlled burn that we burnt some trees. This is Lynne spotting down for us. So I think this is probably about the same spot. And you can see where the sagebrush still hasn't come back. And that was a 2012 picture. This is how they got the sheep down. They went clear to Diamond Lake, and they sent another band of sheep clear up into Snow Mountain between Burns and Prineville. And at first they were able to trail the sheep, but later on they they trucked them in these little trucks, double-decked sheep. They had to take a team of horses with them to pull them through the mud holes, we didn't have really good roads. This is unloading them. Here's my father, Eldred, and the sheep. By 1945, the sheep business in Oregon was pretty well gone. And two parts. When the Second World War came about, the majority, in fact, 100% of the sheep herders then were drafted into the army and in the war effort. And then the second thing happened that my parents talked about was that in World War I, they shipped a lot of mutton to the troops, and that had such a bad program that the army tasted their mouth, and the army did not use lamb in the Second World War.
John, do you know about the herding of those sheep in the earlier days?
Well, I know that my dad said that, at Snow Mountain. In fact, we were at a SRM meeting in Burns at the experiment station. We went up to up into that area, and the people that had the allotment, the sheep allotment that the Breese family had, that they were the second ones. They had sheep up there, but we were looking at some burn programs. But Dad said that there were all kinds of fires all through the Snow Mountains, and they just grazed the sheep around them. They just were small fires that kind of creeped around. That's why they had all that smoke, and called it the Blue Mountains, I guess. Yeah, but they had two bands of sheep, 2,000 head of sheep, 1,000 in each one. One went to Diamond Lake, and the other one went to Snow Mountain. My great-grandfather in his later years, and they tried to, they were working really hard to build a full-blood Hereford ranch out of this, and
so you saw John's great aunt Mamie in that first picture of the family. So she also had a homestead, and this was her house. This was her homestead house. Obviously, when she was living there, it was not falling over. But John's father and his sister, Eldred and Merle, would stay with Mamie in this house, quote unquote house, in order to shorten their walk to school, because in those days, the kids all walked to school. And can you imagine one adult and two kids living in a 12 by 15 foot house? There they were.
And notice that we're continuously cutting juniper trees. And this homestead was one that they used to bridge between the home ranch that they purchased and the original homestead. So that brought the ranch together. Father had prostate cancer and was dying, and by 1984, they had done, as in my dad and my uncle had done, no estate planning. They just assumed that the ranch was just going to go to the next generation, and it was a rude awakening that wasn't going to happen. And when Dad passed away, we just lose the ranch. So Lynn and I, and together my cousins, we took all our life savings and retirement savings and dumped them into lawyers and taxes, and we had to divide the ranch. My cousins and I had disagreements on how we should run this. So we took about an 19,000 acre ranch, and our section would be the original picture would be divided about here. So we have about 8,000 acres of ranch. It's all pretty continuous. There's some BLM property in there. As I said, there was a of 40 acres. Original homestead would be here, and here's that 40 acres that belongs to the BLM. And then we hold 160 acres that we have the grazing rights over here. BLM rights in through here too. So we have some an allotment that we lost all this property from that. It's now in the hands of a Texas oil millionaire, and they have no grazing, and except for errant cows that might break through fences, but it's a hunting preserve. And then to the north, another hunting. They do fee hunting. This is the ranch and showing the soils, different soils programs. I think we could talk a little bit about now that Prineville was a caldera 29 million years ago, and it would be just like Yellowstone Park is today in the kind of way it was, and it would be, it blew up as a shield volcano, and we'd be about 12 miles from the center, essentially center of it, and that caused a lot of rubble rousing, and it changed. It really made a broken program. And then when Mount Mazama, Crater Lake was formed, then we have a lot of we call it ashy soils, but that covered the area. Then as the winds and rains and whatever blew that, so mostly on the north facing slopes, we have lots of Mount Mazama ash, somewhat, up to 6 or 7 feet deep. So when we came back to ranch, like I said, we were broke, but we were able to borrow family money and go do logging. We did our own logging, and we logged for neighbors. And we went through extension, Forestry Extension Service. We ended up looking at this European small scale logging. So we used farm tractors. In Europe, they'd use farm tractors during the summer and log during the winter. And we did somewhat the same thing. So this was a farm tractor, and you can hook different implements to it. In this case, where we went logging equipment. It's a tractor was built in Finland. It's no longer exported in the United States, but this tractor, the dealer was in Westlock, British Columbia. It's up above Winnipeg. And we got this tractor. It was a used tractor. And then it has a lot of ability to use hydraulics more than the normal tractor. And then the other thing is you can turn the seat around and drive it straight. It has controls the straight to drive it backwards as well as forward. Then we bought, this was another Finnish, it's a processor and for doing small scale logging. It has a remote controlled winch on it. You fell the trees by hand, hook this cable to it, and you can drag the trees to the right up to the tractor and the skid trail. You grab the log with the short grapples, pull it up, process it, measure it, and cut it to lengths. There's a saw on it to cut it. And these grapples and delimb the log. It's perfect for these kind of small scale logging, small logs. And it's very effective. It's not used much anymore. In fact, I think this is probably the only one in the United States that's working. There was one other that was sent that somebody in the South is using. There's a dealer. No, yeah, there's a dealer in Nova Scotia. Someplace you can get some parts, but this one's, I bought it out of. To Montreal, Canada. the person that came to show us how to use it, because it's not all that easy to learn, was Quebec and didn't speak any English, only French, but we learned. It was good. Logging, you don't need a whole lot of languages. The other part of this, you hook to the tractor would be a forwarding trailer. It's built for small logs, but in American way, you put big logs on it, but short log. And the other point about being Americans is you don't put just short logs, you put anything you can get on it, push it to the end, and you drag them in. Other part of our logging is we have a case tractor as a brush rake, so we can pile brush, and then a winch with cables, so we can take in bigger logs that you can't pull in with that with the NIA program off the Valmet tractor. So we can log, and we did a lot of logging for our friends and neighbors, and that was what gave us the income when we would do that. So normally this is the kind of logs that really work well with our system. The last part of our logging program would be our log truck is a self-loading log truck, and it's a 1977. Still works, still goes. It takes you about half hour to 45 minutes to move this many little logs. You get to the log yard, they can take it off in 5 minutes. And if it's chip logs like this particular is, and they put it right straight to the chipper, they can have a chip before you can hop your trailer, secure everything down, and get out of the mill yard. In 2020, the market for fir logs really went high. I don't know if you know that, lumber prices went really sky high. There were big fires over on the west side, burned up tremendous amount of timber, and suddenly there was a log shortage, and we were able to supply that. So log prices for delivered fir logs to the valley would be $300 or $400 a thousand, maybe get up to $500 a thousand and board feet. And this was well over 800. So it was like double or almost more than that. And so some places we could get $1,200 a thousand for some of these delivered logs, and piled them up. There's it's hard to see, but here's a T-post. This is a permanent monitoring spot. It's kind of interesting to see monitoring before and after this logging. But we were able to save the T-post in the middle of all this logging. These trucks going out. So when we're talking about per 1,000 board feet on our little 77 log truck with a self loader, we could get maybe 2,500 board feet. These are going out with 5,000 plus board feet. They obviously are newer trucks, higher powered, 600 horsepower trucks. We still when we were logging ponderosa pine, which still doesn't have a market. We're trying to get those coal logs and put them up and then send them out as firewood logs. But you can see here, it's a pretty good sized truck. It can carry extra weight. They call them a drop axle, so that this axle comes down hydraulically when they're on the highway. But you can really pack up a lot of timber. The whole point behind our logging program is to take these overgrown dog hill, or you can see dead trees, and then convert them. This is
Okay, how many of you remember Darren Mitchell? Darren was a student of John Buckhouse's in the early 20s. And we got to know him at that time because John would bring his students over for a big field day. And then Darren ended up in Washington, and he worked with, I think, you, Kevin. Yep, Darren Mitchell worked with you. Then Darren came back down to Oregon, and he works with NRCS in Redmond. So it's been really fun to watch Darren move through his steps in life and stay in touch with him. Thanks to SRM.
So we want to move dog hill stands to something that's opened up. We're in at least a three-year drought. It doesn't look like it's getting much better. And these trees are, trees are dying, and we're trying to get them spread out, give them a chance to flourish and grow. Get the jackpot burning underneath during this time of year, so we can get the grasses come back. You can see these trees, even these trees are really thin, and we need to get them growing back. The bigger the tree that we leave, the larger the space between them that we're looking at. I don't get too much into forestry, but we spend quite a bit of time looking at trying to get trees to grow. You can see still back in 2018, the idea was then that we had a good chip market sometimes, and we were able to come in, take out the really lousy trees, and then keep thinning it. Essentially, could have come back every 4 or 5 years and treated this stand. We have permanent skid trails and easy to use with that NIAB processor. You could go in. You could go 100 feet out with the cable, and so if our skid trails are every 200 feet, we can deal from both sides of those skid trails. This is an interesting tree right here. It's an old growth stump. It's a high stump, but you can see the cat face or cat ear from prior burns that went through here. Each time it would burn, and the pitch would burn the wood and kill the tree. But you could, a live tree, you can really count the rings up, and you can tell what the fire regime was in this. And Steve Fitzgerald, extension forester, and I went through a lot of these tree stands, and we, in our area, the burn interval was about every 10 to 15 years. So you can see trying to get these stands cleaned up and come back and monitor them. This last year, but this was a previously logged stand. You can see the grass is coming back, and they're starting to fill out a little bit better. Same thing with monitoring. Previously, juniper is a mixed stand, but mostly juniper. And then we had a firewood cutter coming in with his pickup and just taking pickup loads out and seeing how that responds, trying to get him to spread the branches. We used to think of it as one cow deep. So a cow could walk over it, and you spread her out and make her walk over it, and use these 1,300-pound stompers to break up the brush. Sometimes it works pretty good.
The young man in this picture is with our Crooked River Watershed Council, and he is the program manager, and he's working with us to help us figure out a way to do some more work on one of our riparian areas. We're really tickled to be able to get to know him. He is a local boy, but he'd been working elsewhere, and suddenly we had a job opening, and we were happy that he got it.
Of course, here it is. It's a balancing act. There's some places you can't really log, and you can't really graze, but they're pretty interesting. And you can tell it's broken up. Here's the parts of the the caldera 29,000 years ago still have to put up with it.
And the geologists from the state of Oregon said that the caldera edge on the east side is on our ranch. So you're looking at part of it here. The most fun part of the caldera, we don't unfortunately have a picture of it, but there's a rock that you would swear is Smokey Bear. It looks just exactly like Smokey Bear. So we'll try to get a picture of him for you all sometime.
I guess the other parts of our logging program is the Department of Forestry requires you have fire trucks on your landing. This is our 56 Ford truck. It's a flathead V8 engine, runs good. We have fire equipment that is, comes down the pike that other units don't want, and we're able to get them from the Department of Forestry through their loan program. So we have a reel and a tank. Doesn't go very fast, doesn't have to come back, it just has to get to the fire.
And everybody's glad to see it when it gets there because they know they've got a lot of water to work with.
Sometimes fire season goes a little long before they call it. And that's one of the reasons we haven't had so many controlled burns in the past, is that fire season seem to be going longer. And then when they quit, they quit. And you can't get a fire going in a snowstorm very well. We have other fire equipment. We have 2 other trucks. This one, they go a little bit faster. This is a 300-gallon truck. The one behind it, you don't see much, is a 400-gallon truck, and then the fire trailer. Fire trailer has an interesting history. I don't know if anybody remembers Lee Edelman, but Lee did some early work on junipers in Central Oregon, and this is one that he wanted to know what a rain shower would do on a juniper stand. And so this was his high-tech way of producing a rainstorm. One of the things that he and John Buckhouse brought up was that if you had less than a quarter inch of a rain on a closed juniper stand, nothing really went to the ground. It got caught up in the junipers. And with our wind, you'd be surprised to know that we do have lots of wind in Central Oregon. It would evaporate and really be a kind of useless thing. This particular trailer was parked at experiment a farm in Powell Butte, and Oregon State University decided to sell that. And it was parked there. John Buckhouse said, gee, we can't leave that there. So we kiped it, and we have it. If Oregon State University is going to do any more research, I guess they can come and battle us for it.
It's a World War II wagon.
I think that they went up to Fort Lewis and got it out of property disposal. This is a lightning strike, old growth tree that died. We cut it down. This is he's a professor or a teacher at Central Oregon Community College, forestry teacher. Here's his son. His son is going into physical therapy school soon, maybe already there. This is a Australian mill, and this is a what they call a slabber. That's about a 5-foot wide chainsaw. It has different kinds of teeth on it than a normal chainsaw, so it can cut lengthwise through the trees. These slabs, and you can see some in the background for our desktops and tabletops, is kind of live edge is kind of popular now. So we'll see if we could market some of that. My brother-in-law, Lynn's sister, Lynn's brother, get this square, is using several of them, and they're trying different techniques to make something really good out of this old growth tree. Here's one of our permanent markers. You can see the meter board sitting out there at 50 feet. This is a 2015 picture, closed juniper stand. Same, here's the monitoring post here. And if you just get the right weather and the right time, you can make yourself look like a real good rancher here and get some. You can see these plants are responding and filling in a little bit. Here's Darren again. What to do with these bigger, larger juniper trees, smaller juniper trees? Well, we've tried another experiment. Bring these trees in, separate them between good saw logs and bad saw logs. These are firewood trees. It's hard to get. You have to really work at long enough logs to bunk on your truck. You got to watch it because junipers are kind of limby. They're they kind of tend to sag, and if you get them down into the reach of your log truck, you can be in deep dark trouble. So you have to be really careful. But you get enough of these logs and then fill it in with the really junky logs. Looks really good on the outside, kind of gooey on the inside, but it's a good sales for that. This is worth about $1,000, $1,200 delivered to somebody who wants firewood. Once again, here's another one. This one uses some cull fir logs for the wing logs and the floor of it, and then fill it up with the junkiest wood you can get in there. Once again, about $1,000, $1,200, depends what you can get off of it. This is the most dreaded person in the government. You don't want to see this one. Actually, it's looking at a juniper we missed. But if she finds a arrowhead or Native American pestle, mortar, some kind of thing, it really runs heck on anything you want to do on that, in that area, especially if you want to use any kind of heavy equipment. Anything more than a chainsaw, you have a real heck of time. She said this particular arrowhead was pretty good because of the little tips on it, and the person made that arrowhead took a lot more time. So she said that maybe about a 4,000-year-old old arrowhead been sitting there. That's a long time, seemed to me, but to sit on the ground, and Darren and I walked right over it, and she snapped that baby right up. We do, like I said, we do a lot of pre-grazing monitoring. These are, we have permanent monitoring posts. This is the meter board. Looking at, we try to go on the, if that's north, this will be west, south, and east. And here's the post. We have to put paint on them. I know most of where they are, but a lot of times you get somebody. These younger kids, they like to use motorbikes to herd the cows, and they need make sure they don't run over, hurt themselves on a post. After grazing, we go back through. You can see that you want to see what we had beginning, what we have afterwards. So this is a different site, but monitoring posts now at 50 feet. And what did the cows do? What did they eat? And or what they didn't eat? And it gives you an idea of, if you take enough of these pictures, you're lost. But on the other hand, it gives you an idea of what's happening over time. You can go back and look at these. What we found is that we have not done a good job of cataloging these pictures. We have had a few control burns. We do all the prep work. We get permits, a fire plan, and they use our little cat to put in the fire lines. And then we hire a firefighting outfit to come in and actually do the burn. It's better to use 20-year-olds to run down these, put the fire in. It's really fun to see junipers burning.
And I don't know if any of you have ever been around a fire or been up this close to it, but I had the opportunity to be by one of the fellows who was in charge of monitoring the wind, and he didn't ever quit monitoring the wind. And anytime there was any kind of a shift, he immediately radioed everybody so that they would know what to be watching for. Pretty high tech to be able to, or high awareness to be able to do that.
After fire,
John, I see a question from Jack, if I can open it up. As close as you are to Prineville and the Ochoco National Forest, I'm impressed that you got some prescribed burning done. Well done. I guess it was a comment.
oh,
And I think that this would be a good time for us to wrap up, take a pause. So if you'd stop sharing, John,
oh
and
no,
then we'll announce part 2 of this presentation and when it's going to occur.
okay.
I think I can probably
Oh, it
control the
says stop share. There.
Yep, yep, there you go.
Oh, yeah, I'm teachable.
Thank
Well,
you.
apparently.
Thank you, John and Lynn. This was a terrific introduction to your ranch, and I'm looking forward to the follow-up part 2 presentation. We'll pick that up a month from today on Thursday, March 9th at 3 p.m. You can read more about the Breeze operation on our website, pnwsrm.org. Just search Breeze. And we'll have this part 1 presentation, which you heard this afternoon, posted to YouTube in a few days. You can search YouTube for the channel of Washington State chapter of SRM, or you can again search our PNWSRM website, and I'll have a link there for the YouTube posting. I would like to say that Ken Visser's continuing presentation and historical overview of BLM and public lands grazing in the US, part 2, is scheduled for Thursday, June 1st at 3 p.m. And you can find part 1 on the Washington State chapter of SRM YouTube channel. Also search for that on our website. So John and Lynn, again, thank you for a great introduction to your ranch, and we're all looking forward to following up with you in a month.